There's so many things that we're questioning. And in the middle of that, we expect that we should just know what an African man is. When there's so little we know,
And
how do we change this world?
templates.
How do we make this world fair? How do we create justice? We don't really know.
I think also it starts with self-awareness and also acceptance that I'm dealing with stuff.
True.
And I think it starts there. A lot of men spend a lot of time at work.
Absolutely.
They go home to rest and they just service the home, the household, pay the bills, make sure that the kids are safe, but they don't live there most of the time.
Absolutely. But there's something we need to say to each other as brothers, because I think many of us are being told, for instance, that as a man you are the head of the house.
Yeah.
Now, in a society that has been built a lot around domination, that could be understood quite dangerously by some men. I'm not sitting here as an unemployed man. I'm sitting here first and foremost as an African man with an experience that has also embedded within me some wounds that I want to heal. I may not know how, but I want to find the courage to work on that and not judge myself as harshly as most of us as African men do. Even if we say, no, ngikhona, but we are not fine. We are not fine.
Why is it difficult for men to find it not okay to say, I'm not okay? Hi there, this is Temiso Pagati, your host. This is Single Dads Network Unplugged. We are still part of season 6. What is so exciting about season 6 that we are bringing different guests and guests that we've seen at other platforms, but they are now here to share their thoughts, their wisdom, and their experiences about manhood, parenting, and fatherhood. I'm so excited today because this guy, and you're going to meet him now, this guy I met almost 24 months, or if not 2 years ago, and we were talking at a conference together. I found so much wisdom, so much energy, and I promised myself that I'll bring him to our network, to our platform, to have a more vibrant discussion about the work that he's doing. Buntu, welcome, my brother.
Thank you so much, Ndati Pagati. It's such an honor to be here.
Thanks, my brother. And I just want to say thank you, first of all, before we start, for the work that you do, for the energy that you pour in this network, about fathers, about parents, about kids, and the work that you do in society is just amazing. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. And I need to thank you as well, because you do a huge job for our society and you become a role model in how we can engage with subjects that many of us find very difficult. So thank you.
These are difficult subjects, but they must be heard.
They must be.
They must be heard.
Yeah.
Tell our viewers how you get involved with this type of work, what organizations or companies are doing, when you establish them, why you establish them, and the type of work you do in society.
Okay, in a short time.
Of course.
I think the things I have ended up doing in my life also has a lot to do with how I experienced the world growing up.
Sure.
Growing up without my parents, feeling very lost in the world for a very long time, and knowing as I grew, or coming to know as I grew, that I'm not the only one. Because I think for a long time I thought I was the only one, because everyone seems to so content, and they don't talk about these wounds that they carry. And I decided I'm going to find a language for my wounds, so I started writing, and I started to really probe and look around, and soon enough I found that most of us are going through so much, but nobody really talks about it. So I then decided that there must be a reason I have grown up this way and come to know what I now know. Can I create a way to work with this all the time? And that has been my journey. I work within communities, I work with men, I work with families. I think my drive is really the African family. That's what I'm very concerned about.
I remember that.
I don't have a set understanding of how a family must function and work, because I think we live in many constellations. But it is two things are very important for me, that as African women and African men, we must find a way to collaborate and communicate and support each other and free each other. We're supposed to be liberated. And sometimes we don't do that. And I think our children should have access to experience the world by us supporting them, guiding them, and being there for them through and through.
through and through. Yeah, I like that. And we were talking about Ebukhosini earlier. I think it's a big enterprise with different companies. I mean, creating an NPC like this, how was it like to really convince yourself that even if it's not for profit, but this is my passion and this is my energy, and I'm willing to pour into the community.
You know, one of Africa's great leaders, Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso, has said that it takes a certain amount of madness to make change in this world. And I think I was given a lot of that madness. And for some reason, because most of what I've done, I haven't really seen other people doing it prior to me doing it. It's maybe after that I come across people like you and say, oh, we're doing similar things. But I've often started when I didn't really have a template or somebody to look up to who does this. So to start Ebukhosini Solutions, we started in 2002. And I think I started out of engaging with many, especially young people who had a lot of questions around identity, culture. Who am I supposed to be in the space of being an African man? What am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be like my grandfather? Am I supposed to be like these moguls that we are kind of presented as role models on TV? Or how do I find my African manliness? And that became something that I wanted to invest in deeply. So we don't only work with men, but we have a men's program as part of many other programs.
Part of others, yes. You and I were talking as we were having tea earlier about that. I want us to start with that. It's not just about masculinity, but how do you define African manhood or the heritage of an African man? What would that mean to you?
Right. You know, to be very honest, I feel this is not the time for us to sit and tweak on definitions. And I'm not trying to avoid your question. That's fine. What I'm trying to say is that we are in a particular moment where so many things are falling apart. We are angry. We don't believe in our politicians. We question the borders that were drawn on our behalf of this continent. There's so many things that we're questioning. And in the middle of that, we expect that we should just know what an African man is. When there's so little we know, and how do we change this world? Template. How do we make this world fair? How do we create justice? We don't really know. And in the middle of that, I think having a question about what does it mean to be an African man, and that's actually what drew me to working with men. And I was shying away for the longest time. I was like, no, I'm not going to add that to the portfolio. But I couldn't run away anymore because too many men were asking the same question. So for me, what is important about identity and understanding who we are is to tell our stories and to sit with the truth of who we have become. Even if it's not an ideal picture, even if there is a lot of pain, even if there's a lot of insecurity and vulnerability in that, let's sit with that. What do we do with what we now know? So for me, being a man is a process, and it has to start with honesty.
And it's work in progress.
It's work in progress.
Are we doing enough as men to tell our stories?
No, absolutely not. We run away. And I must say this. I'm very glad that in my youthful, maybe naive experience, I found a voice within myself to sit with myself honestly. So for me, it was journaling. I didn't have anyone to talk to, and I know a lot of men would say that. I started journaling, and I don't know why. I'd never seen anybody journal. I didn't know that a man can journal because all I know is that 12-year-old girls, they write diaries. That's what I know. But for some reason, I thought I have so much I need to express, and I have no one to express it to. Let me use these books. So for about 10 years, I wrote deep, honest conversations with myself. And I even call it vomiting on a page because it was so brutally honest, so real. Anything that I was thinking, I don't really want to write about it. I was like bullying myself. Spit it out, man. Why are you sitting with all this pain? Why are you sitting with all these questions when I never even invited those questions into my life myself? So for me, this is also how I've walked with methodologies of how to engage men, to find the courage to be honest, to find the courage to talk about our deep-seated pains. Because all of us, in one way or another, we have that pain.
But how was that journey for you when you were starting to pour onto a piece of paper? We're going to talk about healing just now.
Sure.
But I'm imagining that was a process of not just expression, but also of just healing from scars that perhaps were unseen at that point.
Absolutely. It was all of that. And I think to your question, like, how did you start that? It started with me taking an interest in me. Like, not how other people see me, not how I'm supposed to be, not my failure, but just me, with my story, with the journey that I have walked so far in life. I want to understand that. Why am I thinking like this? Why do I sometimes get depressed? Why do I sometimes get happy? Why are there certain people I don't want to talk to? I took an interest. Where does this come from? And I think I'm saying that to also say to other men who think, I'm not sure if I could sit and write. Yeah, but you need to take an interest in you. And I think as African men, because so many projections of who we are supposed to be are mounted onto us. And a lot of those projections we feel, but I could never be like that. I don't have 5 million rand. I don't have 2 cars. I don't have, like, there's a lot of things we don't have. And by default, we then say, I'm a failure. Yeah. So how can I take an interest in myself? Not even comparing myself to someone else, but just find there is a place in this world. I think the Creator placed me on earth for a reason. Am I living my purpose?
Yes. What's the impact of social definitions that come at us as men? I mean, we're talking outside about this, because sometimes we wait for society to define who we are as men. And how does that impact your journey as a man and your understanding of your purpose, if it does affect it?
You know, brother, one thing I don't feel we speak a lot about as black men is that we sit with the deep-seated powerlessness, because we know that our lands were invaded. We know that some of us don't have access to our cultural richness because of what happened. We know that many of us are placed and marginalized and dispossessed because of something that happened that has never really been undone. We may have spoken a little bit about it. There might have been a documentary or 2 or a book or 2, but we haven't really undone it. And that means we're sitting with the history that we were invaded, we were taken, we were stolen from, and we're still living with that. And my point is not that we should just sit and lament about our powerlessness, but if I can understand what created my powerlessness, I can then start to rebuild what kind of power can I possibly walk with now. And that means, like I said, taking an interest in me. Remember, as African people, and in this context, I'll talk about it as African men, our stories have not been told. We are not important in this world. People don't come to our lands because they think we are super intelligent. They come to take pictures of lions.
Take pictures.
Seriously. And even if there's more than that, but that sits also deeply within our consciousness that we don't really matter. So if we embody how the world has seen us, oppressed us, and sectioned us into a very confined space, we also become our own oppressors. So part of that conversation with self is also, yes, maybe I cannot instantly become fully liberated, but I can be in the process of liberating myself. And if I do that, I also want to go into a relationship with a woman who I equally can be in a conversation with and a journey with, to liberate each other.
I like what you're saying, because generational curses have inflicted in us as society so much pain, so much turmoil, and so much trauma. But how does an ordinary man just start? I think also it starts with self-awareness and also acceptance that I'm dealing with stuff.
True.
And I think it starts there. But what have you seen with the groups of men that you're working with in terms of saying, I'm carrying some weight?
Yeah.
Where do you start as a man?
Right.
Or what are the questions you have to ask yourself?
So under Ebokusini Solutions, as we have a number of programs, but Shabaka Men of Africa is a dedicated platform for African men. And we always start every conversation with presencing how did we get here. So if we talk about divorce, if we talk about suicide, if we talk about mental health, if we talk about relationships, we always talk a little bit about history. We always need to frame our conversations, because we need to remember how did we get into a place where we struggle a lot. It's not just because if we don't have that conversation, we will, on a subconscious level, start to think of ourselves as inherently weak, inherently chaotic, inherently not able to do things. And that is not the truth.
It's not the truth.
That's why it's important to also understand the history before our oppression, the greatness that we actually come from, the order that we come from. So for me, that's the first part of the conversation. Then we need to go into, and I want to say this, especially to men and women out there who think, I don't think men really want to talk. At least my husband doesn't want to talk, or my brother doesn't want to talk. I don't think you can get him to talk. In our sessions, and we've been doing this work intentionally since 2010, it always happens that men want to talk. But what happens then is we ask for instance, stay. We say, stay, please, when you come to our sessions, we're
Yes.
going to ask a question. Have you ever had a problem with mental health?
Sure.
And we want you, because we know that you might have a history about that.
Yes.
Can you start sharing?
Can you share?
We don't announce you as a speaker. You are just sitting there in the group and they say, today we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, welcome. We do a little bit of warm up and energizers because that's important. Because, you know, as men, we come in like this and say, who's there? What does he know? Like, that's what we do normally first. So to kind of loosen up a little bit, and we don't know who's a director, who's unemployed, who's a CEO, who has nothing. We don't know who in the room has those profiles. So we are all similar.
Yeah.
Then they start to talk about his issues. And as I'm listening, because maybe as a participant, I've told myself, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be quiet. I'm just going to listen. But as I'm listening to Steph, I've also experienced that. Through his story, I recognize that this is how my father was. I didn't know that this was something that other people have experienced. By the time it comes to me, I'm just purging. I want to talk. It's even hard to let the microphone pass because people are like, Buntu, you know, you also need to share. So my point is, what that is, it's to create a space of being affirmed. You are being held by a brotherhood that actually is invested and interested in your story, not just your motivational talk, not your profile, not that you've traveled to 50 countries, but just that you are a man who has experience. Let us drink from your experience. And that moment is extremely powerful.
I like what you're saying, Buntu, because do you think workplaces, companies, organizations are doing enough to create space for people or for men to talk? Because a lot of men spend a lot of time at work.
Absolutely.
They go home to rest and they just service the home, the household, pay the bills, make sure that the kids are safe. But they don't live there most of the time.
Absolutely.
They live most of the time at the workplace.
True.
But at the workplace is designed and even organized in such a way that spaces for men to talk are created.
I do not think they are designed for these conversations. That doesn't mean we should never have them, but I think office spaces often are very confining. And I think we also don't talk enough about what they do to African men. Because as African men, we also enter the world with a lot of stereotypes around us. So if I'm from Venda, there's a particular stereotype, again, especially if I'm in Joburg. If I have a Zimbabwean father, now that's an issue. And I kind of need to, I learn as an African man that I need to navigate and I need to compensate for what you might think about me. Because if I'm from Venda, you probably think I don't know certain things. If I'm from Limpopo, you probably have a certain view. Now I need to compensate to show you that I really belong here.
I actually am here.
Exactly. And I'm mentioning those characters. There could be many other profiles that we feel we need to explain and we need to make people see that we really know what we are doing. And in that equation, I don't want to talk about that I'm about to go through a divorce. I don't want to talk about my 20-year-old son who doesn't speak to me.
Who doesn't speak to
I
me.
cannot do that. It's not fitting with my profile, and you're probably going to judge me.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I think we need to try to break up the hardness of the office to some extent. But I always insist when I'm invited by companies or organizations to have conversations with men from a particular workplace, can we go out in nature? We don't have to sit in confining spaces that only
Just
remind us.
break away from the familiar
Break away,
environment.
sit under a tree, let the sun kiss you. Like, be in a place you can actually ground yourself, which is probably not the office.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because I want to come to the point where we touch the work that you do with men in a mountain and also the retreats that you and I were talking about outside. How does that look like with the work that you do where you take people out of a familiar environment and what activities you perform and how does that change the fabric of a man? Because I'm sure when they come back, they're different. Because I've seen with our own events.
Absolutely.
But again, sustaining that kind of energy is important. It can't just be the event because then you come back to your little place that is going to suck your energy and then again you go back to where you started.
No, you are touching on exactly what is my point as well, that many of us are not consistent with the work that we do. We might come to one session, but we feel this should be enough. I think we treat ourselves in the way that we think of a car. When it goes to repair, after that you should just work. If it doesn't work, it's a useless car. You should get rid of it. And I think we also think if I'm going to one counseling session, if I'm going to sit with Stay and tell him all my problems, after that, I better be good. And if I'm not, the problem is me. So I don't want to commit. I don't want to go long journeys. I want it to be over. I want to continue with what I'm supposed to do, which is not healing myself. So what we do, we have a number of sub-programs. We have Black Men's Lekgutla, which is basically a conversation like this, where we go deep into the things we struggle with and the solutions. We have Men on the Mountain, which is a full day dedicated out in nature. We sit under the trees and we prepare. So the young men who are not married would then think about how prepared are they for a committed relationship / marriage. Those who are married or in long-term relationships think about what is the quality of the relationship I am in. And those who may divorce think about what is it that I can learn from what I don't want to repeat if I go into a relationship again. So it depends what people take out of that session depending on what situation they're in. But it's a deep conversation. I'm one of the elders together with a few others who also guide that conversation. We go into culture, we go into identity, we go into politics, we go into economics, and we go into understanding the African woman. And you would ask, but how can you teach how a man should relate to the African woman? We're not trying to erase the presence of the African woman, but there's something we need to say to each other as brothers. Because I think many of us are being told, for instance, that as a man you are the man, you are the head of the house. Now, in a society that has been built a lot around domination, that could be understood quite dangerously by some men. So that means my woman must not talk back. She shouldn't have too many opinions. She shouldn't be well read because then she's going to make a fool out of me. Exactly. So we kind of we walk with the premise that the woman should be small. She should be under me. Where did we learn that? It's through colonialism. Through colonialism. That's our first teachings on domination. You dare stand up and you'll be whipped, you'll be killed. That's where we got that understanding that domination comes top down.
We grew up with
and if I invite that colonial power dynamic into my home, I'm creating a place of terror. But if I don't know that there are other ways of finding my power as a man, I might only use that template because I think that's what other men do. But when I come into, for instance, Men on the Mountain, and I hear that that's not the only way. There's a gentle way that I can hold my power. And my power doesn't exist just because I shout and scream and tell everybody around me what they must do. Actually, when I do that, I'm very small. I'm not powerful. I'm afraid. And I think that fear on the mountain, a lot of men get to understand their deep-seated fears and understand that many of the things that they haven't really touched and gone into are things that they now need to start working on.
I like that work because vulnerability opens so much opportunity for a man to understand themselves.
True.
And not just to because avoidance doesn't solve problems.
It does not.
And when we are vulnerable and we open up and we feel afraid,
exactly,
and then the facilitator can then touch places inside of us that have been guarded for the longest time.
And maybe just to add to when you use the word vulnerable, because a lot of men start to cringe. What do you mean I'm going to be vulnerable? Because vulnerability comes with opening myself up in a way that I could be hurt or taken advantage of. Myself. But what it really is to take the mask off. And to say that I'm not sitting here as a director. I'm not sitting here as an unemployed man. I'm sitting here first and foremost as an African man with an experience that has also embedded within me some wounds that I want to heal. I may not know how, but I want to find the courage to work on that and not judge myself as harshly as most of us as African men do. We judge ourselves extremely harshly. So much that we know that even suicide is a thing amongst young African men. It happens at a much larger rate than it does, for instance, with African women. And there's a reason for that. Because I come into the world as this African man, and the dominant experience for many of us is that I'm a failure. My parents are not proud of me. Nobody's going to marry me. A woman would never really choose me if she knew how I really am. She would probably choose someone else. That's the truth many of us are walking with, even as we smile. Even if we say, no, ngikona, but we are not fine. We are not fine.
Why is it difficult for men to find it not okay to say, I'm not okay? In other words, is there like a societal conditioning that maybe teaches men to be strong? You must push through. You must always look that you are managing or you are carrying the load okay. What does your organization teach men about saying it's okay not to be okay.
So what we want to teach is that African culture allows a multi-level form of being a man. A man must not be strong all the time.
It's not
A man
possible.
must not, he must be strong sometimes. He can't choose to be weak. But there's a time and place, and you need to learn, you need to teach yourself a way to navigate that. I trust Ste, so I'm gonna call Ste and say I need to talk.
Yes.
And when I call, Ste knows what I'm saying. He knows I'm not coming with a business proposal. He's ready for me.
He's ready.
And we need to, as friends, we need to have that accord. But many of us don't know how to do that. So I'll say, nah, you should go out for a drink, man. Look at some chicks. I don't want to look at chicks. I need to talk, but I don't know how to say that. So we need to learn a language to say, let me say things like, Ish, I'm going through a lot. And then sometimes we don't know how to respond to that. I know, but you'll be fine. You know, don't worry. Like, don't be too depressed. That's not advice. Say, can I ask you what you're going through? Can we talk about it? Are you okay to talk to me about it? And it's awkward in the beginning, but you must know and you must remember that once you start opening that up, a very deep power also seeps into you. Because for a moment, you realize that my story is not just about powerlessness.
Yeah.
My story is also about surviving. My story is also about coping mechanisms. My story is also about being able to be there for others, even when I couldn't be there for myself. And that counts for something. Yes, it was imbalanced, but now when I know, I can start to shift that balance. So for me, it really has a lot to do with creating a safe space for African men.
Absolutely.
And I find that the method to do that is to work through other men's stories. When other men let their guard down and they talk about, even when you see somebody who you think, oh, but this is a business mogul. He talks about, my wife hates me. You can talk about that? And actually, you don't seem small. You don't seem like a weak man. You talk about something horrible, but I can see you are able to hold yourself. And through that, I might learn that I can also develop a language to talk about my pain.
And you find similarities when somebody shares a story.
True.
And suddenly you realize, actually, I thought my story was bad.
Exactly.
And that is worse than what I thought. Like I always say, when our problems are put in a pile and then we are asked to choose whatever we want, eventually we end up with our own.
Absolutely.
Because other problems are just too big
for
us to handle.
Yes. But remember that that moment will always feel awkward and something that I probably shouldn't do. It will always feel like a big risk. They might be looking down on me if I start to talk to him now.
He's going to judge me.
So you need to also find the courage. And then I'm going back to something that I said earlier, that when I started writing, I started taking an interest in me. So my interest was not primarily what do other people think? Am I good enough? Do people see me as a real man? That was not my main focus. My focus was, how can I relate to me?
Yes. I like that. Talking about coping mechanisms, what are you teaching the groups of men that you work with around coping mechanisms? Are there practical examples that you want to share with our audience around those? Yeah.
I think there's so many different ways, and I always sit down first listening to the person I'm talking to. I don't come in with preconceived ideas that you probably need this and you probably need that. I listen to the story, and based on that, some of the things that often come up, I also, obviously, as I benefited from writing myself, I will always challenge the person I'm talking to buy a book. So if it's for Stembiso, I'm saying this must be the book of Stembiso. You must buy, and it mustn't be the one that cost 7 Rand 90.
Of course.
It doesn't have to be expensive, but it must be a book that you hold very dearly, because this is the book of you. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I find that it's very important for us to go back in our lineage to understand where our pain started.
Where we come from.
Because many of us are born into pain. Even before we could develop our own, we carry people before us and their insecurities, their oppression, their deep-seated trauma. So when you understand your grandparents, when you understand that they actually migrated from another place in the country, they actually worked in the mine, they actually worked for white people, now you start to understand that I can't just say that my grandmother was just always quiet. She was carrying pain.
She was carrying stuff.
And because I didn't understand what it meant, as she might have raised me with that muteness, I now understand that through being raised under her, something also hardened within me. And when I understand her better, and can forgive maybe how she treated me, which maybe wasn't the nicest. But I can understand why. Now I'm also opening up something for my own healing. So to understand your lineage, to understand your family tree, to go back to places where your family once existed, very important.
Yeah.
Go and sit there. And people say, but I don't know exactly where my grandparents were living. But try to find the closest point and close your eyes, sit somewhere and say, because I believe we can talk to our ancestors every time. And I do. So have that conversation and say, my grandparents, I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I have this on my heart. I want to find out this. Encourage me, walk with me,
connect.
Teach me how I can ground myself. And in that moment, you'll find that you are tapping into a power that we as African men also have access to.
I like that because you and I were speaking earlier about spirituality and creating that connection with the unseen, with the higher power. Sure. I want to touch on this. A lot of men that we work with in the Single Dads Network will go through some healing journeys and healing processes, either through organizations we work with and our partners, but they regress sometimes.
Yeah.
After a period of time, something sucks them back.
Absolutely.
How do we prevent that? Because continuity is important and sustaining that healing process is important. But how can we prevent men from going back?
You know what? We're talking about fatherhood, and I just want to mention an example. I'm not saying this is the solution for everyone at all times, but one thing I decided to do quite early in my life was because I saw younger people coming to me, even when I was quite young myself, and saying that there's a father quality in you that I see. And in the beginning, I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think I have a father quality. I'm still just a young black man.
Yes.
But as I grew, I started to honor that people would see that. And maybe from the age of 25, I started to take in young, especially men. Well, actually only men, because staying with women would also cause a lot of suspicion and could be violating some codes and things like that. So I chose to take men in, young men, to stay with me, and also when I got married, to stay with us as a family. We probably have stayed with about 30 men who are over some time, some for 6 months, some for many years, at different times of our lives, who have become sons of the house, who have become men who need to be held accountable. And of course, it's done in a way that it's an agreement with you as a young man. This is what we do. This is what we like. Would you? And in exchange for us allowing you to stay with us, these are some of the expectations we would have. Can we agree on that? Let's try for 3 months and see how it works. If you're not happy, no problem. And what that has also led to is that we have a huge family of now much older men who are married, who have children, who have walked into family lives based on what they learned while they stayed with us. And that doesn't mean that we are magic teachers necessarily, but we are present. And we have conversations with you all the time. Whether we like what you did or not. If we like what you did, you're going to get a lot of praise. If we don't like it, we're not just going to shout. We're going to sit, but how did this happen? We want to understand. Is this something that's going to happen again? Do you know why you did X, Y, and Z? Does it make sense to you? So we have very intentional conversations. And a lot of young people are also not used to this. I remember in the beginning when we started this, one young man said, and we asked, like, after some months, tell us, like, how is this experience for you? And he said, the most uncomfortable thing is when I come home after having spent the day out and you ask, where have you been? What did you do? How was your day? Why do you want to know my day? Where I grew up, nobody wanted to do how my day was. Nobody wanted to know how my day was. So as you started to ask me this question, I thought, this is a trick question. They're trying to understand if I'm lying. They're trying to understand if I maybe went somewhere and smoked. That's what they're trying to find out. How can you possibly be just interested in how my day was? And for me, that tells me something very significant, that many of us don't feel that we are seen, we don't belong, and we are not important. And we start to mount that even to our own self-image. I'm a man who's not important. I'm a man who doesn't count. I'm a man that the world should not see.
I was saying that to someone else, Buntu, that men most of the time are looking for significance. They're looking for social acceptance. They're looking for social recognition. But sometimes we want that recognition, acceptance, but we're covering a lot of stuff behind the surface. And I just think we don't have enough spaces where honest conversations flourish.
Very true.
I want to come to this point now. We're going to approach the end of our conversation, but this is important. The work that you and your organizations do with the boys
Sure.
or the young kids, because I always say only a man can raise a man.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, and how does that look like, and why is it important for especially young boys to feel connected to some kind of a social father if they don't have a present father, or someone they can look up to as a dad?
No, thanks for that question. I think I want to use the opportunity because you say young boys. I want to add young black boys. And I want to explain why. Because some people are saying, but that's very racial. And why are you so... Yes, it is. Intentionally so.
But it's intentional.
What we want to do, and we are very aware that we cannot do everything. So we need to make some choices. And we want to be there for the young black boy and for the older black man as well, who knows that they're struggling with something and want to find some answers. Because if you don't want to find answers, if you don't want to be in communication with yourself, we can't really help you because we can't force anyone. But for those who have questions, for those who know that there's something I need to improve in my life, I just don't know how and I just don't know what, we are there for you, and we will walk a guided journey with you, whether it's as an individual, if it is you being part of one of our programs, if it is a therapeutic journey. It depends. Some people just, like we talked about now, some of us just need to belong. We just need to be a place to be accountable to.
To be accountable.
You know, because sometimes as men, and I think this is something we need to talk more about as as African men as well, when we are not expected much from, when we don't really have to be accountable, some of us develop a very immature characteristic. So for instance, some men will say, Ish, I don't know how to be faithful. I just end up I'm in a relationship, but I sleep around all the time. So you're waiting for a magic pill that's just going to make your system go flat and you're not going to go out and engage. No, this is the organ you need to work on because you're making choices. When you lie down with somebody, nobody had a gun to your head. So it is a willful choice to do that. But you just don't want to take accountability for it. So I think we need to expect more from African men, and many men are not used to be expected from. To expect to be loyal, to expect to be honest, to expect to be present, to expect that we see you and we know you were not where you're supposed to do where you're supposed to be yesterday, and we hold you accountable for that. That feels a bit uncomfortable, but do we want? Because some of us want to live in our immaturity until we are 60, and as a society, we do not benefit from that. We need men who grow up and show up. And there's a process to do that. So when all we can say is that, but you're a man, you're just playing around, you're nonsense, we're not really hitting the target. We're not inspiring the man to understand. Because often that playfulness, that immaturity is also a cover for all the things I don't believe I can do. I don't think I can be a good father. I don't think a woman would really choose to base her whole life with me if she know how I am within myself. So I'm covering it with clownish behavior. I'm covering it so that I can be drunk most of the time. I'm covering it with other things so that my true self cannot really be seen. Because probably if you see it, you're going to judge it. So to start to rebuild that inner self, that's a powerful journey. And we need to do that with and for African men.
I like that because it has to be intentional. It has to be deliberate. But tell me, how do parents or fathers specifically really, how do you train them to really connect with the kids, get to know their kids as humans, not just as kids, not because they are your kids, but just to understand who are you as a character, as a human being. Do you touch that part? Because I find that sometimes raising kids to us as dads, it's like a chore. It's functional. It's performative.
I've done my part.
It's something I have to do.
Sure.
But is intentional connection something we can train our fathers?
Absolutely. A number of fathers and sometimes mothers as well will come to me when their teenage son, it has often been son, sometimes daughter, is getting out of hand. But often they don't do that at the beginning when they see the warning signs. They do it and it's quite developed. And at the time when this teenager doesn't want to talk to anyone and just feel judged and just has closed down. So when they do that, they often want to just drop the child off and then I should fix the child and they should come back and get a nice child. That's not how it works. So I say, don't go. You are going to be in this session. I'm going to talk to your son first to hear but what I'm going to try to encourage him to do is when he starts to open up a little bit about what he's going through, I will ask him, can we have that conversation with your father present? And probably in the beginning, he's going to say no. Okay, you can't just say no. What about what you told me now can we not say in his presence? And then he has to pick and choose. So the rest, we're going to talk with your father, with your father present. Yes, we can do that. And then we talk. And when his voice, so we already make an agreement that when his voice may, because it's uncomfortable to say these things in front of a father that you've never told anything and that you basically think is probably not interested.
Yeah.
So if the son cannot talk, then I fill in blanks on his behalf, and then I say that he also spoke about this, and you are going through something. Can you tell your father what that is? And then as the father is listening, now we need to listen to the father. How is it for you to listen to this? Did you know this about your son? Did you know that he's going through this? Do you know that he feels that you don't choose to do any activities with you? And then some fathers get upset. Because I came here because he's the problem. Now it seems like I'm a bad father. That's not what we're discussing here. It's not about you necessarily being a bad father, but maybe you don't know how to connect. Because maybe you have also not gone through what happened to you as you grew up. I'm reminded to just say this, Esther, because I think it's so important. So many of us as men, and I want to say the most extreme pain, so many of African men have gone through some form of violence, sexual exploitation, molestation at a young age. Many men have been introduced to sexual activities at a time when they were not even supposed to know anything. And it happens at such a rate. I'm not saying it's with everyone, but it with so many that it doesn't make sense that we close that conversation so quickly. We are uncomfortable to talk about that. We don't seem to have a lot of tools and mechanisms and ways to deal with that. Because when you have been violated, whether physically, verbally, spiritually, sexually, at a young age, you start in your life closing down. You starting your life, or you closing down, or you take on a character. You become the clown. You become the loudmouth. You become the one who always whistles at girls and shout and scream and become very annoying. Because it's better that the world is angry at me for being a clown than just hating me for just being me. Myself. So we take on characters, and under that characteristic is a deep-seated pain that most of us do not know how to talk about.
And that's the pain that erodes.
So what I've learned is that we need to understand how to create the safe spaces I just spoke about and be intentional when we are in those rooms. Most of us, I find, there have been a few cases where I have felt that there's very little interest and willpower here to change anything. And I think that death inside, obviously, if that's what you are sitting with, I can't force you to go through something that you say, I don't need it, I don't want it, I'm not interested. But I will still stay in touch with you after that. After a month, I'm that annoying voice. I'll say, but still, how are things going? You know, we spoke about that and you said you were fine, but I had a feeling you were not. Are you fine? Buntu, can you leave me alone? No, I'm not going to leave you alone. And this is the reason why. A number of men who are not in my physical sphere, meaning they are in other parts of the country or the continent. Every 4 months, I send a message. How are you doing? What's going on? So many men tell me that those messages mean so much to me. Because, and this is regardless of what kind of status, what kind of popularity, what kind of family constellation you have, it is about being seen just for being you. And I think that's what African culture in its ideal form, and many of us don't live with African culture in the ideal form, but when it works and when it presents itself the way it's supposed to, it makes you belong. It makes you accountable. People see you. Even if you're not even raised by your biological parents, you always have parents. That's what African culture is supposed to do to you. So when we live with this fragmented status of African culture kind of falling apart and not being full and sometimes even being oppressive, there's a lot of work we need to do. Because what many of us seem to do is to say, but these African cultures don't work. And then we think, I'm not going to really choose a culture, thinking that westernization is not a culture. It's a culture. And we're choosing it like we are paid for it. Yes. And I want to say this. Many of us as African men are dangerous. For too long, we have been brainwashed into thinking about cultural ways of being that are not this is not our journey. And we become oppressive, we become dysfunctional because of choosing things that don't belong to us. So this is my explanation of why I focus on African men, African families, African women, because there's something that needs to work for us. And it is different. There are converging points. I'm not saying it's all is completely different, but there's a different grounding. There's a different ancestral path. There's a different history into how many of our families sit with deep pain. And we need to have African methods for those African challenges.
I like this. If you're listening, and again, Buntu will come back to our platform, because this, you can tell the passion that he has for the work he's doing. And I'd like you to continue subscribing to our network, because these kinds of guests are the people that keep us actually challenged, and they actually give us critical thinking around the parenting things. I want to ask you this now. Fatherlessness is a big scourge, social scourge in our communities, and in this network we always talk about social fathers. In your work, or within the space that you work with, or within, what are you doing to encourage single moms that are raising a boy or a young girl with a very distant dad, or either passed on or just on the run, not available, to really find that figure, that father figure within community, family, to really be present in that. Is there something like that you're encouraging, especially for mothers raising kids by themselves?
We do encourage, and I've had those conversations with some single mothers as well, but I feel very strongly that the encouragement must be more to us as men to avail ourselves.
Yes.
Many single mothers feel that they are already judged. There's already, and when women say, yeah, and as a single mother, oh, she's a single mother, okay, she's probably difficult. Like there's a reason that brother left her. So we're already judging, and I think many women also feel that they are being judged. We also live in a society where African women have to be extremely strong. And for them to, so I think many women also feel that I'm struggling with, you struggle with your son. Like already now you're judging this woman because she probably is not fit, she's not strong enough, she doesn't earn enough. So I think also women feel a bit apprehensive about putting themselves in a potentially vulnerable situation where they could be judged, and where you could say, yeah, I'll see what I can do, I'll come around sometime, but you never come. So that probably is an indictment on me, like you don't want to be, what is this woman now expecting that I should step up for her? I'm not the father. That could be a potential outcome of a woman asking you. So what I'm trying to say is that as a man, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wonder, I wonder if she sometimes need her son to. Yes, she does.
She does.
And she doesn't, especially, I'm not saying you should just walk on the street and avail yourself. But in relations that are close to you, that you know, don't even wait. Say, can I come around on the weekend? I'm going to a soccer game. Could I take your son? Avail yourself. Because there are some men who also are intimidated when they're asked that, especially men who have not been in long-term relationships, who may not have the experience of fathering, thinking. Because one thing I observe, and we spoke a little bit about this earlier, that for some of us, fatherhood is a chore. Some of us are awkward with children. Let's be honest. I didn't really think about this until I had my son when he was very young. And I would find that women, when they came into our house, they would always go and talk to him, even more than any of us as parents. But men would just go as the child was not there and just say, yeah, no, we need to talk about, did you see the child? Can you say so? Or they would just say, hey, boy, how are you? And then they would continue the conversation. Not taking this boy up, not sitting with them, not doing anything. So there's also something we need to learn about a certain tenderness that our children need, and they benefit so much from it. I'm part of a residential commune where we live together as very intentional families. These children have 5 fathers. These children have 4 mothers. They have they are just overstimulated with parenting in a very beautiful, playful, organic, and dynamic cultural way. So that's a choice we made because we want our children to really feel they belong. They are princes and princesses in this world. So there's a lot that we can do that maybe we haven't learned from where we grew up, that doesn't sit in a textbook. We also need to be creative because we are a powerful people and we can find solutions to anything that we are going through.
My brother, this has been wonderful.
Thank you so
I
much.
just want you to know that we're going to continue reaching out. And
Please do.
the stuff that we're talking about outside, about collaborations, partnerships with the work that you do. This
Thank you.
network is going to reach out. I hope you're not going to be offended because...
Not at all. I'm looking forward.
The work that you're doing is just powerful. Thanks,
Thank
my
you.
brother.
Thank you so much.
This was beautiful.
All right.
And for those of you that probably missed part of this conversation in the front, subscribe, because Buntu is definitely going to come back and we're going to do great things together as we try and harness this energy of a father and a dad and build bridges between the fathers and their kids. See you soon. Hope you stay with us.